Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to our parents, students, counselors, as well as our esteemed panelists to the India panel of our UG Virtual Symposium 2020. Let me begin by sharing a little about TCC. TNI Career Counseling is a global admissions consultant and test prep venture for undergraduate, master's, and MBA programs in India and abroad. Our initial personal one to one counseling with parent and child helps identify goals, personality, learning style, career values, and skill sets to help us guide the higher education outcome over time by advising on areas that need strengthening. We work with all stakeholders to make this possible. Next slide, please. As you can see, we have more than 50 advisors from all across the world who are experts in their fields and have graduated from top colleges. We're all very kind and willing in helping our students with guidance for growth in their respective fields. So, beginning with today's panel, today we have Mr. Dhaval Mehta, who is the CEO and founder of TCC, who will also be moderating today's session. He's an expert career coach with more than 17 years of experience. He's an NACAC member, Pearson Certified Career Counselor with a certificate in college advising. He's also a University of Michigan and Columbia University graduate. So, this is our illustrious panel for today. All of them have done incredible work in their field so far and are joining us today from across India. To begin, we have Hansa Sachdeva from Ahmedabad University, who's the director of the Office of Undergraduate Admissions and Financial Aid and head of external communications. She has more than 10 years of experience in the education sector. We have from Ashoka University, we have Harpreet Singh, who's the assistant director of outreach. He has about 8 years of experience in the field. As Dean of Admissions and Outreach, Arya Majumdar oversees outreach and admissions operations for JGU. He also handles university rankings and was instrumental in getting JGU featured in the QS World University Rankings in 2019. Siddharth represents ETS as the business consultant for India, where he manages the agent and test center relations for the TOEFL IBT test and has more than 15 years of experience. Yeah, so now I'd like each of the panelists to introduce their institutions and could Hansa begin?
Thank you. All right, so Ahmedabad University is a 10-year-old university owned by an 85-year-old trust. The trust was set up by Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, working with entrepreneurs in and around Gujarat. And the idea was to create world-class education in India. So this was 1935. We were looking at independence, and it was important to set up universities and educational institutions that would take India forward. So the trust was involved with supporting the IIM Ahmedabad, CEPT University, NID, and I think Ahmedabad University is the youngest and the most ambitious venture that the trust has started. We actually offer 8 different programs, 22 majors. And for us, if you see, we start with the list of majors rather than the programs, because we need to perhaps remember that the interest in a particular subject area is far more important than a piece of paper called a BA. And also, I think the fact is that now we allow students to actually move from one major to another. So a student from economics can actually evaluate their interests and even change majors. We allow a major and a minor. So therefore, the focus on the majors. We have 3 schools: management, humanities and sciences, and engineering. And yes, students admitted to the university can actually take courses from across the entire university and all its schools. I think that should serve as an introduction. So it's back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. Mr. Harpreet, could you take it away now?
So Ashoka University is a philanthropic initiative. 150 plus founders have come together to form Ashoka. And the intent was really to create a world-class university which was affordable for all. So the word which is really there is inclusiveness. So when I say liberal, it's not just doing multiple subjects together. It's not a multidisciplinary program. But the idea is really to create an education which is beyond a boundary of any sciences, commerce, humanities, which could not just see things linear, but see one thing from multiple dimensions. Where research is the key, class composition is very important, diversity is the role of the game, and that's all about it, right? So we're a young university in that sense, but the core is really to create that model which otherwise did not exist in India, right? So that is it.
Could Arya take it over?
Thanks. So instead of talking about the university, I'm going to tell you a story. A little over 10 years back, a young lawyer finds himself in the basement of the New York University, and he decides that, and he's a student at Harvard, and he wonders why is it that Indian private universities aren't looked upon in the same reverence as US foreign universities or such private universities across the world. So he embarks on a quest. He embarks on a quest that takes him at least 4 years to start to convince an industrialist by the name of Mr. Naveen Jindal to do three things. One, to provide the necessary costs and support to start India's first social sciences and arts and humanities based multidisciplinary university. Second, to do so in a not-for-profit manner. And third, to grant full academic freedom and autonomy to the university itself. As a result, JGU was established, much like Ahmedabad University, with 10 faculty members, 1 school, and 100 students. Today, we are at 5,100 faculty members, 5,100 students, 574 faculty members, and 9 schools.
Mr. Siddharth, could you go next?
Just to introduce, I represent ETS TOEFL, and ETS has been actually founded in the year 1947. It's one of the world's largest private non-profit education testing and assessment organization. So we develop various standardized tests for K-12 and higher education, and also administer international tests, such as the TOEFL. Given the pandemic and the situation, we actually came up with a version of our TOEFL test, which could be taken at home. And we have kept everything the same. It's just that you'd be able to take it at the safety of your home. So what I wanted to highlight with regard to ETS TOEFL and its presence in India is that we have been engaging with various higher education and testing ecosystems, for over 1.5 years, very actively right now. And also in the recent past, we've supported efforts of LTI, which is the English Language Teachers Association of India. And what we are doing currently is offering various test prep and resources that students will be able to, prepare themselves at home itself. And we want to take it further over the discussions. Thanks so much.
Now, I'd like Dhaval to sort of set the ground for how education looks like in India right now, why it's such a good time to study in India. So, Dhaval?
Great. Yes, no, absolutely. And I think thank you to all the panelists. Very strong introductions. I think each one of the panelists here and the universities being represented all have amazing ideals, amazing stories. The strength that they bring to the Indian education system is unparalleled. And thank you for that. I foresee that as we come along, years to come, we're going to see that changing the education environment and the country as a whole. So thank you again, all dear panelists. I think that we're in for something which is incredibly, going to be an amazing journey ahead. And what I want to tell the students here and the audience is that, admissions seen in India, which earlier used to be only very driven by grades, is changing. I think universities are pausing and also thinking about the kind of students they really want. So I think that, even though the slide is right here, which tells us about, having participating in Olympiads and state level competitions, but I know that each and every one of them, in terms of diversity, when they are looking at students, they're really looking at the students as a whole and not just the numbers. This slide also tells you about how many universities have addressed, the pandemic situation where they do not have the grades, for the 12th grade. So why studying in India an attractive option? I think very big The first thing being interdisciplinary education and the focus of it, and being world-class institutions, global faculty. I think there's an increased emphasis on research and critical thinking. I think that, having 100 plus courses also to choose from, I see many of them introducing them as you move along. I see there's sufficient financial aid being also provided to students, and the post-education options in every sector today are attractive. I'm sure that today our panelists will also be able to talk to you about how their students have done. I see that India is changing. I see that the education here is just as good.
So the agenda for today is to discuss what could be the new normal now, where we're talking about the world is changing so much and we cannot go back possibly to the old world, right? And how various scenarios for admits to fall 2020 will work out, whether easing of admission requirements will happen for fall 2021, whether blended learning is happening, how it will continue, whether universities have online infrastructure, what capacity the universities will run at considering the pandemic, and how are universities taking up their responsibility on keeping the campus safe, how online testing, whether it will continue, how students can prepare themselves better, and moreover the psychological impact on students because of this pandemic and how they can deal with the ramifications of that.
So onwards to our first question, how is fall 2020 going to turn out for admits due to COVID-19? Maybe I could ask Hansa first and then the other panelists as well.
Change was pretty much due in the education space in India, and perhaps with COVID we've actually traversed a longer journey than we might have otherwise. So how will things change? Firstly, knowledge will change. What one needs to learn, what students should be studying today to prepare for a very different tomorrow will definitely change. But really, I think the key is that a lot of the change is something which is positive and desirable. Many of us have been looking at holistic reviews of applications. That's going to get a huge fillip. We have been doing this for some years. Today, institutions which might not have considered it earlier will be looking at a substitute for class 12 results. We'd like to believe that students are more than a mark. They are individuals, and universities must step forward and understand those individuals rather than going by a metric.
How are you, at Ahmedabad University, trying to cope with that?
Sure. So we traditionally look at 4 parameters. We do look at academic grades, and those are grades from class 10, 11, and 12. We have, over time, been conducting personal interactions on campus. And that's a practice that we're geared to and will continue. The third is the statement of purpose or personal statement. And the fourth is other achievements, extracurriculars, the context of the student. This year, we have taken a policy call that irrespective of COVID-19, students will start class in August 2020. We will allow students to enter campus if their results for some reason have been delayed. We're very cognizant of the fact that many boards are still to complete exams, results will inevitably be delayed, and we're very clear that irrespective of COVID, learning must continue.
Harpreet, would you like to add any bit to this?
So what we've really seen as a shift is the number of applications have really gone up. So from day one of Ashoka, we were not hiring on merit, quota or funding. So thus a student of 99 also gets rejected, a student of 60 also gets selected. So the model at Ashoka has always been around checking if you're a right fit. So again, the student is not compared with another student. It is a context-based application, right? Or it is not about your marks against somebody else's marks in that sense, because every city is different, every family is different, every school is providing a different setup.
Then my question becomes, Harpreet, is that isn't that so difficult then to analyze?
The thing is that we have been doing it for a while. And so Yale really helped us set up our admission process, right? So all these collaborations who have been doing such model of, education for so long have helped us set up Ashoka in that sense. There are 2 angles to it. One is the application itself. So
Yeah.
there is a 10th to 12th mark sheet. So depending on when he's applying, either he applies with a predictive score or 12th final. But
Right.
then there are co-curriculars, extracurriculars. So there are 3 essays, which are basic questions, but never asked to a student ever. And then there is a letter of recommendation. And that could be from a teacher. Then anybody who clears this shortlisting is called for an interview, right? Has an on-the-spot essay and has an Ashoka aptitude test, which is optional.
This point in time, was the test made optional after this, or did you all go online? How did that actually work out? Right?
But this year, it just turned online for everybody. I definitely know the program would start on time. So none of the classes got cancelled, one. Right? We were able to transition to that online thing very, effectively. But thankfully, because we're residential universities, it is comparatively easier for us because we could really, create a lockdown situation within the campus if so required.
Arya, maybe I'll get your perspective first.
We've made a couple of critical changes to our admissions process. We engage in a holistic view of the student, which involves not just the class 10 or the class 12 board marks, but also includes their statement of purpose, as well as a faculty interview. Now, for us, the faculty interview is really important. What we've done this year is, of course, we've moved all faculty interviews and all faculty interactions online. The second criteria that we've sort of changed a little bit is our entrance exam. Now, what we've done with the JSAT this year is that we've moved it completely online. The third critical change that we made this year is that we started rolling out conditional offers pending class 12 board results. Now, of course, this applies to most of our programs. One of our flagship programs is that of the law school. We are guided by the Bar Council of India, which requires, again, a national level exam. This is the LSAT India exam. So we can't really talk about law school admissions until the LSAT India exam takes place.
If you can give me a little bit of an idea of how do you see, fall 2020?
As of now, even as I speak, there's a crack team on campus that's figuring out ways to ensure social distancing. We're revamping our health center, and we can talk about that later. At JGU, we are expecting classes to begin on the 1st of August, and for the class of 2020, classes to begin on the 1st of September.
I think one of the major questions is also, is online. And as we move along, testing for online, which I'm sure even Siddharth can talk about. Do you feel that this is going to also play an important role as you move ahead in the education process? As we are looking at maybe a blended learning approach, I would like to know what is happening here in India. How are you all viewing this?
We closed down the university. We shut down the university for physical classes sometime in early March. And in a matter of 48 hours, we went online. It has been a very steep learning curve, not just for our students, but for our faculty members as well. We will continue to engage in online classes. We will continue to engage in online assignments. But I think what this has shown us is that it is entirely possible to conduct some education online, and perhaps some kind of education will have to remain in terms of physical classes. Questions that have cropped up with us is, how do we conduct studio courses for our architecture school? How do we engage in negotiations in our law school? How do we engage in field visits in our liberal arts school?
And I think that is the dilemma across the board. Hansa, maybe you can give us some more, of an insight.
I think there is an enormous amount that remains to be done. We've realized that digital has certain distinct advantages. We don't believe it will replace the physical classroom, the campus experience at all. Employers have known this for a long time, and they have signaled to universities that you have to change. Honestly, it's not something that anyone has been prepared for completely. And the fact is, we must do it. The engagement with the community must continue. Learning must continue.
I think that many of the universities and the big uphill task that they also have right now is how do they improve that online infrastructure for all kinds of courses? Harpreet, would you like to mention anything?
So let's also think from a student perspective, right? So transitioning for a student from a classroom to a digital itself is not easy, right? In that sense. Thankfully, we are offering an undergrad program where the duration is 3 years, and the the campus itself is a lot of learning. There are a lot of things which really go hand in hand. So I think any program which is greater than 1 year would adapt comparatively better because they'll have that flexibility of time. I don't think a student should really, worry too much, but it also creates opportunities which is beyond boundaries, right? So it has really helped even, colleges, universities to come together. So I think it's going to be a win-win. At the end of it, I think we're all going to come strong.
I think this pandemic has been an opportunity in the crisis. Also, I just wanted a perspective from Siddharth. Siddharth, if you can just talk about how online testing has also changed with TOEFL and
it's certainly something that students would be able to take up to skill themselves with the specific English language requirements that they would need to apply to universities around the world, even to abroad campuses of even Indian universities who do accept the test. The specific version that we came up with was that students would be able to take it up from the comfort of their homes. But I'm certainly aware that at least institutions across India are doing very well with regard to delivering these online classes to students at a very short time. And it certainly might not, replace the brick and mortar setting of their classrooms in their university. I think, blended learning can actually bring in a more rich, deep, and a more meaningful experience for students as we go along.
So I think India has been very adaptive in that sense. And I think this pandemic would really allow technologies of various levels to really come together and collaborate.
So I think that there is a paradigm shift now because now they know that it's possible. Moving on, how is safety and living arrangements on campus being addressed? I'll start with Arya.
So, for example, there are three main issues that we see in terms of adhering to social distancing when students come back to campus. Three spaces that the students occupy. The first is the classroom, the second is their hostel rooms, and the third is other common spaces. What JGU is planning, classes will take place in a staggered manner, perhaps having classes at half strength. In terms of the hostel rooms, and mind you, we are a fully residential campus, and we can go into lockdown. We are making preparations to ensure that students do not have to share as much common spaces as they would have otherwise. Having said that, we still expect the worst. You hope for the best, but you expect the worst. So we are revamping our health center, which has been there since many years now. What we've done this year is that we've added a few ventilators and a few isolation wards. We have tie-ups with some of the best hospitals and medical centers across Delhi NCR.
Even Hansa can step in and talk about how Ahmedabad University is taking care of that.
Our context is a little different because we are an urban campus.
Absolutely.
This 200 acres is actually in the center of a city. Our primary focus is going to be on distancing. Clearly, in Ahmedabad University, God forbid, there is a case with a student, we have access to all the medical facilities in the city. We have a full-time, doctor on premises. We have a counselor. We have our own medical arrangements, our own rooms for medical treatment. I think also, many experiments are happening in terms of processes. Our vice chancellor is actually the ex-director of IIM Bangalore, and he's an operations management man. So his focus is completely process-driven.
Sure.
He's working with the deans to try and see how do we ensure that there is actually zoning on campus. Things like, for example, smaller classes will happen.
Harpreet, would you like to add? Thank you.
Sure. So I think the challenges are similar. A lot of conversation is happening of how to manage classes, how to manage common areas. So because it's a 24/7 campus, I could really run a class at 10 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning of the same batch divided into two, right? I could really do a lot of things on campus just because it's a residential thing. The capacity to utilize the entire campus 24/7 is an option available, which probably we would not have used historically. So
what I would like to do is probably introduce now, each one of the university alumni or students and they can talk a little bit about their experience of online learning. Let's start with Ahmedabad University.
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Yes, please go ahead, Hirak.
Yeah. So I'm Hirak Acharya, an alumnus of Ahmedabad University. I did my BBA and graduated in 2018. Small things like the faculty are concerned about how each and every student is really shaping up is really commendable. Plus the intellectual bank of faculty that we have at Ahmedabad University is truly global. One more important aspect is how Ahmedabad University is trying to transform self and society is an exciting thing. A small yet significant example, which is very relevant in today's time of COVID, is how we are futuristic in our approaches. So we have been fully equipped with learning management systems and online learning models. So taking classes online or doing evaluation was not really a challenge for us right now. To just conclude, I would say that Ahmedabad University is a really progressive university, and we invite one and all to join us in our endeavor to transform education. Thank you so much.
Next, I think I would like to invite the alumni or a student at OP Jindal Global.
I'm finishing my third year at the Jindal School of Liberal Arts and Humanities. I learned so much, not just academically, but socially through different courses offered and things like that. And online classes have actually been very smooth. We haven't faced any difficulties. We are having a great time in online classes.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your perspective. And at this point, I would like to ask an alumni or a student from Ashoka University, if they're here, to talk about the experience.
I think we're joined by Ishan.
In terms of online, how quickly we were able to adapt to online learning, that was something definitely exceptional. And different forms in which we were ready to adapt, whether there were online classes, whether there were online panels. We had professors sending in recorded lectures. Were small classroom sizes. The way we were approaching this problem was becoming very student-centric, and it became very tailored specifically to the student. It's been definitely a phenomenal journey in terms of learning, because I think we learned perhaps the same amount, if not more, sitting at home. So even with the grading policy, we were able to get a seat on the table with the founders and with the vice chancellors to really speak about it, tell them and give our grievances.
Thank you so much for sharing that. If there's anything that the panelists might want to advise students at this point about, either taking a gap year or with anything that is psychological, how they're feeling about this at this point in time. I understand that, and this is what I have and believe, and I've been telling, undergraduate students also, is that, please think about a reason why you want a gap year and what are the other things you would do, if not doing online learning or going on to campus. So, if you would like to, Harpreet, please go ahead.
Sure. So I think it's a valid question. And I think the conversation should not happen because COVID happened, I should take a gap year, right? I think the conversation should be, what do I really want? And am I getting it not? I think you are looking for a university, but the university is also looking for you, right? It's not just one-sided, right? So what you really have to do is just be yourself and present yourself in front of a panel. In case you're being a part of an undergrad, I think for an undergrad, I could say it very clearly. For a 3-year or a 4-year program, whichever you're going to apply, at Ashoka or anywhere else for that matter, if it's a dream school of yours, if you're targeting that, please go ahead for it. Don't change your plans for it. So if you have an opportunity greater than the university at this point of time, go ahead, grab it. Universities are comfortable, taking students with a gap year too. I don't think you got to worry. There are a lot of opportunities within India, outside India. If there is a dream college of yours, dream university of yours, and you have gotten, I don't think you should worry.
Arya, would you like to add anything?
A gap year, because of the pandemic, I don't know whether it's still a valid reason. Take a gap year if you want to, right? If you're going to do something with it that will add on to your CV, that will add on to your personality, that will add on to yourself as a holistic individual. But don't do it for the wrong reasons. For an undergraduate student, taking a gap year would mean having to do something that is really meaningful and that will, sort of explain why they had to take a gap year, as opposed to, oh, I took a gap year because of COVID-19. Because there's a pandemic doesn't mean that education should stop.
Hansa, would you like to add?
So I'm not going to take a position on gap year, not gap year, because I think it's a very individual call for many of you. Perhaps you've planned on something, and today those plans are looking very, very different. But I will say that please step back. A lot of good is emerging out of COVID. So, in all this negativity, there has been something positive. It's possible that for some of you, COVID is that moment when you actually change and evolve and emerge as different people. Think of what you'll be feeling not after 1 year, but think 5 years down. You know, right now it feels like all we have to do is go through COVID and life will be fine. And I hope when you look back at COVID, you would have taken the right decision for yourself.
No, lovely, and I'm very optimistic that all of these students are going to only get that enhanced support from universities like yours. So thank you very much for an amazing panel discussion today.
Because need-based got mentioned, I had to pitch in. So
Yeah.
Ashoka has a need blind admission policy. That means it does not look at your pocket to give you a seat or to reject you. However, it looks at your pocket to give you financial aid. So it is not about your want, it is about your need.
You know, what I was going to say is that all the universities here have some form of financial aid, which I have actually seen across all universities. And I think that that's how you can attract the diversity and retain talent. And I think that that's so important. And I'm so glad to see all the universities doing this. So thank you very much to all my dear panelists. I would like to thank each and every one of the panelists, Siddharth Iyer from ETS TOEFL, Harsha Sachdev from Ahmedabad University, Harpreet Singh from Ashoka University, and Arya Mazumdar from OP Jindal Global University. I would also like to thank all the students, the alumni of the universities who are here today. Thank you so much for your insights. Of course, if you have any questions for us, please do reach us. There is an email ID and number, and if there's any questions also, we can get you across to universities. And just the closing slide, I will just tell you a little bit about how we at TNI Career Counseling are focused on students. One is with life coach and mentoring. We help them with plan creation, academic advising, extracurricular advising, admission insights, rapport building and interest broadening. We help them with college applications, including the school list selection, the essays, the specific process of the application, even summer schools, even coaching on any entrance test prep, and extracurricular support. Thank you again, everyone.